Welcome back to CIA Declassified. Today we step into the most dangerous year of the 20th century, 1983, the year of the pig. I like pigs. While the world was dancing to pop music, the superpowers were staring down the barrel of a shotgun. The Soviet Union was convinced the United States was planning a decapitation strike. To catch the Americans in the act, the KGB launched the largest intelligence gathering operation in their history. They called it Ryan, a Russian acronym which basically translates to nuclear missile attack. Project Ryan was a machine of pure paranoia fueled by every scrap of data the Soviets could find. Project Ryan was initiated by KGB chairman Yuri Andropov in 1981. I might have said his last name wrong, Andropov, requiring agents to monitor indicators that the U.S. was preparing for a first strike. The KGB used a complex computer model to calculate the probability of a U.S. attack, assigning weights to different pieces of intelligence. During the Able Archer 83 military exercise, the Soviets mistook a NATO communication drill for a real transition to nuclear conflict. Soviet military aircraft in East Germany and Poland were placed on high alert with nuclear weapons loaded and crews waiting in cockpits. A quote from Robert Gates, former CIA director. "We may not have believed the Soviets were as fearful as they actually were, but they were as close to the edge as they had been since the Cuban Missile Crisis." End quote. The CIA initially dismissed the Soviet panic as propaganda, failing to realize the KGB was genuinely acting on a worst-case scenario. Ryan required agents to check if lights were on in the windows of the Pentagon at night, believing late hours meant war was imminent. The British double agent Oleg Gordievsky was instrumental in telling the West that the Soviets were actually terrified, not just posturing. A quote from a declassified 1984 CIA Special Intelligence estimate. The Soviet leadership's perception of a U.S. first strike threat has reached a level of extreme sensitivity, end quote. Project Ryan monitored the price of meat in Western Europe as the Soviets believed a government would stockpile food before a nuclear exchange. The agency tracked the movements of the nuclear football, the president's communication satchel, to see if the KGB was following it. During the peak of the crisis, the Soviet early warning system falsely detected 5 incoming U.S. Minuteman missiles. Stanislav Petrov? I'm definitely not saying his name right. Stanislav, and then Petrov. A Soviet officer famously ignored the computer warning, correctly guessing it was a system malfunction. A quote from the man whose name I can't pronounce. I'll try again. Stanislav Petrov. "The siren was howling, but I just had a funny feeling in my gut. If I had followed orders, the world would be cinders." End quote. The CIA conducted psychological profiling on Andropov, trying to determine if his failing health was making him more prone to nuclear paranoia. NATO commanders were unaware that their exercise, which included a simulated move from conventional to nuclear status, was being read as a real-world countdown. The declassified files show that Project Ryan had a secret branch specifically for monitoring clerical activity at the White House. In the aftermath, President Ronald Reagan was reportedly shocked by the depth of Soviet fear, leading to a shift toward diplomacy. The agency developed the Panic Index, a tool to measure how fast a nation moves from peace to a war footing based on communication traffic. Ryan continued in a diminished form until the final collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Declassified memos reveal that the CIA nearly canceled the Able Archer exercise because of excessive Soviet reaction. The project studied mirror image thinking, where both sides assumed the other was thinking exactly like they were, creating a lethal loop of misunderstanding. The 1983 crisis is now considered by historians to be the closest the world has ever come to an intentional nuclear war. Ryan proved that intelligence overload could be just as dangerous as a lack of information. The agency investigated if Soviet satellites were programmed to trigger an automatic launch if they lost contact with Moscow for more than 10 minutes. A quote from a 1983 Pentagon briefing: "We are no longer looking at a chess match, we are looking at two blind men in a room full of loaded mousetraps." End quote. Project Ryan analysts examined the sleep patterns of Soviet ambassadors to see if they were being kept awake for emergency strategy sessions. The declassified files contain panic transcripts where KGB agents in London frantically reported that the British were hiding their children, which turned out to be a bank holiday. The crisis led to the creation of the Nuclear Risk Reduction Centers to provide a permanent, direct line of communication between military leaders. Analysts Declassified revealed that the KGB were instructed to count the number of cars in the parking lots of major defense contractors every morning at 4 a.m. as a primary indicator of surge production. A quote from a 1982 internal memorandum to the Director of Central Intelligence: "The Soviets are not merely preparing for war, they are mathematically convinced it has already been scheduled by the Reagan administration." End quote. One of the most peculiar indicators in the Ryan program was the monitoring of shifts in the purity of cryptographic signals, as the Soviets believed the U.S. would simply simplify its codes during an actual launch sequence to ensure speed. Intelligence documents show that the agency set up sting operations to feed the KGB false indicators, accidentally making the Soviet panic even worse by confirming their worst fears. A quote from Oleg Gordevsky, I still don't think I'm pronouncing his name right, Gordivsky. "The KGB did not see a military exercise. They saw a funeral shroud being draped over the motherland." End quote. While the history of Able Archer is known, a 1983 CIA dossier titled "Ryan, the False Positive" is completely redacted. Why is the government hiding the exact moment the panic index hit 100%? Get ready for the theory of the phantom missile. Speculation suggests that Project Ryan wasn't tracking Soviet panic, but inducing it through electronic warfare. The theory claims the agency sent fake launch signals into Soviet computers, and the black redactions hide the end of the world codes that were accidentally sent to Moscow, which almost caused a retaliatory strike before we could recall the data. What if we actually lost? A dark rumor suggests the CIA used Ryan to hide the fact that a small nuclear exchange actually happened in the North Pole in 1983. The redactions are the radiation charts of an event the public was told was a solar flare, and we're living in the reconstructed aftermath where world history was sanitized. Could the president be a ghost? Speculation suggests the redactions hide evidence that Reagan was moved to a bunker for 6 months, and the black bars are the transcripts of the AI body double used to address the nation during the crisis to prevent global riots. Watch out for the currency reset theory. It claims the redactions hide a plan to delete all global debt by triggering a false nuclear war, and the black ink is covering the names of the banks that would have owned the world after the reboot. What if the moon is a warhead? Some theorists believe the redactions hide Project Lunar Lash, where the CIA was preparing to detonate a nuclear device on the moon as a demonstration to the Soviets, and the black bars hide the impact coordinates. Could they stop time? A wild rumor suggests the redactions hide a secret time stutter experiment, where the agency tried to slow down the perception of time for Soviet leaders so they couldn't react to a real launch, and the redactions are the psychic side effects on the population. Brace for the geologic warfare theory. It claims the redactions hide evidence that Project Ryan discovered the Soviets had mined the Yellowstone volcano with nukes, and the black ink covers the vulnerability map of the American crust. Some believe the redactions hide Operation Nightmare. Speculation suggests the CIA broadcast a low-frequency fear signal across Russia to make the population too terrified to support a war, and the black bars hide the locations of the terror towers. Beware the automated Armageddon rumor. It claims the redactions hide proof that the KGB successfully handed control of their nukes to a computer in 1983, and the agency is hiding the fact that we've been at the mercy of a rogue Soviet AI for 40 years. Some speculate the black bars hide the ARC protocol. The theory is that the agency found a way to upload the consciousness of the U.S. government into a satellite, and the redactions are the server logs of our digital leaders. Lock your doors for the talking bomb theory. It claims the redacted portions of Ryan describe a Soviet breakthrough in sonic nuclear tech where warheads could emit a sound that makes people welcome the explosion, and the black bars are the specific musical notes that trigger the effect. Is the dust already here? A terrifying rumor suggests the redactions hide the location of slow burn nukes that were buried under DC during the '83 crisis and are set to go off in 2026, with the black bars hiding the deactivation codes that have been lost to time. What if the ocean is a fuse? Speculation posits that the redactions hide Project Abyss Fire, where the agency planned to boil the entire Baltic Sea to prevent Soviet ships from leaving port, and the black ink covers the names of the sea creatures that went extinct in the process. Brace for the Mandela missile theory. It claims that Ryan successfully launched in 1983, but the agency used a torsion field to rewind the world by 1 week, and the redactions are the list of people who still remember the original timeline. Finally, lastly, could the sky be a curtain? Some believe the redactions hide the discovery that the missiles detected in 1983 weren't US or Soviet, but something else entirely, and the black bars hide the sketches of the crafts that watched the world almost burn. Was Project Ryan a success? For the KGB, it was a terrifying success. They built a system that could see a war coming even when no war was planned. For the CIA, it was a wake-up call. Ryan forced the Americans to realize that intelligence is not just about what the enemy can do, but what the enemy thinks you are doing. Operationally, it prevented a war by exposing the very fear that almost started one. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the panic of Ryan led to a new era of global stability. Indicator-based forecasting, the development of the first computer models that can predict political instability based on subtle social indicators. The hotline upgrade, significant improvements to the Washington-Moscow link to include video and high-speed data. De-escalation theory, new military protocols for signaling during drills to ensure the enemy knows it's just a game. Open skies policy, the breakthrough that eventually led to treaties allowing superpowers to fly surveillance planes over each other's territory to verify peace. Project Ryan shows us that the end of the world doesn't start with a bang, but with a whisper of fear in a dark room. The next time you see a news report about unusual military activity, or you notice the lights staying on late in a government building, remember that someone, somewhere, is counting the heartbeats of the planet. Join us next time as we examine the Psychotronics Dictionary. The agency needed a language for the impossible. We'll uncover the declassified 1970s glossary that defines the science of the supernatural. We'll look at how the government officially defined terms like bioinformation and psi-field. Join us next time for the vocabulary of the void. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.